representing chapter 4, section 1, federalism, the division of power. What this section is going to be about. Federalism divides the powers of the United States government between the national government and the state government. Why federalism? Framers went through difficult issues when they met at Philadelphia in 1787. How could they create a strong enough government to meet the national government the nation's needs and at the same time preserve the strength of the existing states? Some framers favored the strong central government based on British model. They all knew the revolution had been fought in the name of self-government. The framers knew that the government under the Articles of Confederation had proved too weak to deal with the nation's many problems. Framers were decided to concept of limited government. Government power posed a threat to individual liberty. Therefore, the exercise of government power must be restrained. To divide governmental power as federalism does is to curb it and so prevent its abuse. Federalism is a system of government in which a written constitution divides the power of governmental on a territorial base between a central or national government and several regional governments, usually called states or provinces. Each government has its own set of powers. No level of government that is acting alone can change the basic division of powers the Constitution has created. In order to change the basic divisions of power, both the state and the national government must give consent. Also, each level of government works through its own officials and laws. The American system of government stands as a prime example of federalism and is designed and set out in the Constitution. The document provides for a division of powers between the national government and the states. This was suggested in the original Constitution and then spelled out in the Bill of Rights. The powers not delegated in the United States by the Constitution nor prohibited by it to the states are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. 10th Amendment. Federalism has two basic levels of government with its own area of authority and operates over the same people and the same territory at the same time. The strongest characteristic of federalism. It allows local governments to deal with local problems and the national government to deal with national problems. Every region is different and every region has its own needs and desires. Illustrations of this point are nearly endless.
And you're talking specifically, are you talking about the state and the county level? Is that what you're mentioning here? Why there's so many different possibilities?
One example could be from the book. A third of the states are directly involved in the liquor business, operating as a public monopoly, elsewhere private enterprise enrolled. In 48 states, many gas stations are self-served. In New Jersey and Oregon, the law forbids motorists to pump their own gas. Another example not in the book is legalization of marijuana. Colorado has legalized this drug in the state, but in most states it still remains legal.
What about Washington? State of Washington. I believe it's legal in the state of Washington too right now.
Marijuana?
Yeah.
And
Powers of the national government. National government is a government of delegated power. It only has power granted from the Constitution. There are 3 delegate powers: express, implied, imperative. The express power is like how the national government has the power to coin money, but states don't have the power to make their own money. Only the national government has that power.
Can I ask you to back up your slide there one more time, just before we get into this, because I know I can see by your slides you're going to cover those 3 areas there. But could you maybe review with this, compare and contrast expressed, implied, inherent. That way, I think we'll be able to better discuss these examples you're going to give.
Express powers are powers that are actually stated in the Constitution. Like, they're actually written there that gives the powers to the national government.
So when you say written, you mean we can see it in black and white, the words are there, you can do this, you cannot do that.
Yes.
Implied are the ones that they're not really specifically stated, but it says something so in the Constitution, so they figure that it just falls in the same thing as that.
So the reasonably suggested
Yeah.
or implied.
So it'd be kind of like maybe the details. So the express power is Congress has the power to declare war, and maybe some of those implied powers would be that they could, as a result of that express power, they could break up the military into any number of branches that they want to, and purchase aircraft and tanks and things like that.
Yeah,
Even though
they could just elaborate from that power and then just add on to it. Pretty much, yeah.
And inherent powers are powers that they're not specifically stated in the Constitution, but they don't say that they can't do them either. So it doesn't say anything about they do have the power to do it, but at the same time it doesn't stop them from being able to do those things.
So you're saying that just the nature of it being a national government, there are certain things that come with being a national government, no matter who you are, which country you are.
And implied power is like to prohibit race-based discrimination.
I like that picture.
And inherent power is that they're able to conduct foreign relations.
Powers of the national government. The express powers. Express powers are delegated to the nation's government in so many words spelled out expressly in the Constitution. The powers are also called inherent powers. Most express powers are found in Article 1, Section 8. There are 27 powers that are given in the 18th clause.
Do you know those by heart, Elizabeth?
The what?
You don't know those 27 powers? You're going to be tested on all 27 of them. I'm just kidding.
They include the power to lay and collect taxes, to coin money, to regulate foreign and interstate commerces, to raise and maintain armed forces, to declare war, to fix standards of weights and measures, to grant patent and copyright, and to do many other things. The rest of the compressed powers are spread out in the Constitution. Article 2, Section 2 gives several powers to the President. The powers include to act as a commander-in-chief of the armed forces, to grant reprisals and paragons, to make treaties, and to appoint major federal officials. Article 8 grants the judicial power of the United States to the Supreme Court and other courts in the federal judiciary. Some express powers are found in various amendments to the Constitution. The 16th Amendment gives Congress the power to levy an income tax.
The implied powers. Implied powers aren't expressly stated in the Constitution, but are reasonably suggested, implied by the express powers. The implied power is found in one of the express powers. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 18 gives Congress a necessary and proper power. The necessary and proper clause says that Congress has the power to make all laws which shall be necessary and proper for carrying into execution the foregoing powers and all other powers vested by this Constitution in the government of the United States or in any department or office thereof. In congressional and court interpretations, the words necessary and proper have come to a meaning, effect, convenient, and useful.
As Jane Madison wrote in the Federalist number 44 to explain the meaning of the clause. No exemptions to more clearly established in law or reasons than though wherever the end is required, the meaning or authority. James Madison argued for the last clause because he was Secretary of the Treasury at the time and wanted a national bank. Thomas Jefferson argued against him, saying the Constitution should be interpreted literally. In years to come, however, he used presidential power, not expressly stating the Constitution, to purchase the Louisiana Treaty. Territory.
You mean Thomas, oh yeah, you had Thomas Jefferson. I saw James Madison there, okay.
Necessary and proper clause is occasionally called the elastic clause because over time it has been stretched to cover so many situations. Congress has provided for the regulation of labor management relations, building of hydroelectric power dams, and the building of illustrating highway system. It has made federal crimes of such acts of stolen goods, gambling devices, and kidnapped persons across the state line.
It prohibited racial discrimination in granting access to such places as restaurants, theaters, hotels, and motels. Congress has taken these actions and many others because it is reasonably implied by just one of the express powers, the power to regulate interstate commerce. The inherent powers.
Just by way of information, that interstate clause, that particular clause has been used more than any other to justify implied powers in the Constitution. I mean, we've had laws written by multiple Congresses and presidents that as long as they can some way tie into that interstate commerce clause, they've been able to pass stuff that some people will be like, what? And you got that out of the Constitution, how? So just be aware of that. Interstate commerce clause has really been used as a big rubber band.
Oh boy.
No, sorry. Inherent powers belong to the national government because it's the national government of a sovereign state in the world community. The Constitution doesn't expressly provide for them. They are powers that over time all national governments have possessed. It stands to reason that the framers of the Constitution intended the national government they created to hold these powers.
Inherent powers are few in numbers. The major ones incorporate power to regulate immigration, to deport undocumented aliens, to acquire territory, to grant diplomatic recognition to other states, and to protect the nation against rebellion or other attempts to overthrow the government by force or violence. Most of the inherent powers are implied by one or more express powers.
So that's interesting. Now, you know, this big fight that's going on now amongst the three branches of government regarding immigration, now you guys can actually speak intelligently about it by saying, yes, they're arguing over whether or not, you know, the president has overstepped his inherent express powers. Is the judiciary checking it based off of Article 3? I mean, you guys could really have a lively discussion specifically referencing the Constitution. It's kind of neat. You're informed. You're informed citizens now.
Wow.
One example could be the power to regulate immigration is suggested by the express power to regulate foreign trade. The power to acquire territory can be drawn from the treaty-making power and the several war power. The doctrine of inherent powers holds that it's not necessary to go to these lanes to find these powers in the Constitution. In other words, these powers exist because the United States exists.
Powers denied to the national government. The national government can also be denied in certain powers. The Constitution denies some powers to the national government in so many words expressly. The national government does not have the power to levy duties on exports, to prohibit freedom of religion, speech, press, or assembly, to conduct illegal searches or seizures, and to deny any person accused of a crime a speedy and public trial or a trial by jury. The many powers not granted to the national government are the powers to create a public school system for the nation, to enact uniform of local government. Congress cannot tax any of the states or their local units. If it could, it would have the power to destroy or tax out a state. The 10th Amendment declares that the states are governments of reserved powers. Reserved powers are those powers that the Constitution doesn't grant to the national government and doesn't at the same time deny it to the states. Any state can forbid persons under 18 to marry without parental consent or those under 21 to buy liquor. It can ban the sale of pornography, outlaw prostitution, and permit some forms of gambling and prohibit others. States can require doctors, lawyers, hairdressers, and plumbers to be licensed in order to practice in the states. Automobiles and other property used in connection with such illicit activity as illegal drugs, trafficking, or prostitution can be confiscated. They can establish public schools, enact land use laws, regulate the services, and restrict the profits of such public utilities as natural gas, oil, electric power, and telephone companies, and do much more.
So your point in saying with the states here is just to argue that if it's not an expressed, implied, or an inherent power laid out in the Constitution, then all the other powers in this big power vacuum remain with the states.
Yeah.
The states. Power reserved to the states. Constitution doesn't give the national government the power to take the actions mentioned in the previous slide. It doesn't deny the states them powers to make laws. The state has countless powers reserved to them. Most things done by government are done by local governments. Important reserved power. The power to protect and promote the public health, public morals, public safety, and the general welfare. The Constitution doesn't grant express powers to the state except for the unlimited power to regulate the manufacture, sales, and consumptions of alcohol beverages mentioned in the 21st Amendment.
Powers denied to states. No state can enter any treaty, alliance, or confederation. They can't print coin money. They can't deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. Some powers are denied to the states inherently. No states or local governments can tax any of the agencies or functions of a national government. Each state has its own constitution. That document also denies many powers to the states. Example, McCulloch versus Maryland, 1819. In Maryland, law required federally chartered banks to use only a special type of money. This amounted to a tax. It was brought to court by a cashier of the Baltimore branch of the bank and was declared unconstitutional.
Exclusive and then concurrent powers. Most of the powers that the Constitution delegates the nation government are exclusive powers. These powers can only be exercised by national government alone. They can't be exercised by the state under any circumstance. Some of these powers are denied to the states. Example, power to coin money, make treaties with foreign states, and to lay duties, tax on imports. Because of the particular power involved, some powers are denied to the states but are nonetheless among exclusive powers of the federal government. If the state could exercise the power to trade between and among the states, would be at best periodic and at the worst impossible. This is the power to regulate in certain
Part of the powers delegated to the national government are concurrent powers. The concurrent powers are the power that both the national government and the states possess and exercise. Examples are the power to levy and collect taxes, to define crimes and set punishments for them, and to condemn take private property for public use. Concurrent powers are held and exercised separately and simultaneously by the two basic levels of government. Concurrent powers are powers that the Constitution doesn't grant the national government and that at the same time doesn't deny to the states.
So then they can just take up property?
You know
So
what?
that's what they're saying pretty much?
Well, it didn't used to be that way. To be honest with you, in the beginning, it was almost, remember, Thomas Jefferson almost put in the Declaration of Independence life, liberty, and property, because with John Locke, he talked about that. Those were some of those inalienable rights. But for whatever reason, they took that out. And for many decades, in fact, over a century and a half, people, your property was your property. But steadily, the government getting more and more power, that means less and less power for individual citizens. So actually, back in 2008, the straw that broke the camel's back was a case called the Kelo case, where essentially the Supreme Court said any government entity has the power to take away your property for whatever reason, as long as they give you quote-unquote fair market value. And guess who establishes what that fair market value is?
They do.
They do.
They do.
Yeah. Does that sound like a scam or what?
Yeah.
Yep.
It used to be you had to have a really compelling reason, like you were building an aqueduct system, or you were building a dam, or you were building a library, or a school, or a major road, something that overwhelmingly is needed. But now you can do it for a strip mall, or because you consider that neighborhood a blight. In fact, I remember I may have told you back in 2008 there was a case that led to this Kelo case where a local city wanted to take away these old neighborhoods. They thought they were old homes. They didn't look, fancy and new.
Yeah.
So they condemned them so they could put up a strip mall. Do you know what a strip mall is?
Yeah.
Just a small couple store little mall. Nothing big. And they messed with the wrong group of people because a lot of these guys in that area were World War II vets. These are guys who fought on Iwo Jima. They'd been in Battle of the Bulge.
Yeah.
They got in their World War II uniforms and went in front of the media. It was ugly. But unfortunately, they sided with the city.
That's really messed up.
Land of the free, Maya.
In other words, concurrent powers are those powers that make it possible for a federal system of government to function.
The federal system and local governments. Governments in the United States is sometimes discussed in terms of three levels: national, state, and local. However, this can be misleading because there are only two basic forms of government: the national and the state government. It doesn't mean, however, that there isn't government at the local level. There are more than 87,000 units of local government in the United States today. All of them are subunits of the various state government. The state has created these units with the use of the Constitution and its laws. Local government can provide services, regulate activities, local taxes, and many other things, but they can only do because the state government gave them the power to do so. In local government, when the powers are exercised, they are essentially exercising the power of the state government.
The supreme law of the land. The American federal system produces a system of government in which two basic levels of government operate over the same territory and the same people at the same time. An arrangement of this sort is found to result in problems between national law and state law. The framers of the Constitution had anticipated such conflicts, therefore they wrote the Supremacy Clause. The Constitution is the supreme law of the land, which in turn means it stands above all other forms of law in the United States. Such things like acts of Congress and treaties stand immediately beneath the Constitution. The Supremacy Clause has been called the linchpin of the Constitution because it joins together the national government and the state governments into a single government unit, which is a federal government.
It's called the rule of law, right, guys? No one's above the law. No president, no senator, no congressman, no student at LeGrand High School is above the
Well,
law.
how when celebrities get caught with drugs, they call it a scandal, and they're able to walk free, and then when I'm not common citizen or whatever, just not really famous or popular, like they could be sent for a long time in jail. Like, I don't know, kind of bothers me a bit.
I understand that. And again, this is in theory, right? Sometimes in practice, it doesn't actually
Yeah.
play out that way, especially if you're an all-star, I don't know, NBA basketball player and you get caught, you know.
Might get away with something.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
Norte.
The Supreme Court can be seen as an umpire in the federal system. One of the Supreme Court's major duties is to apply the supremacy clause to the conflicts that arise because of the dual system of government. The Supreme Court was first called to settle a dispute between national and state law in 1819, and the case was McCulloch versus Maryland, and it involved the Second Bank of the United States. Like we mentioned on the other side earlier, it was because a Maryland law, it stated that they could tax, what was it? They could.
The state tried to tax the national bank, and that went to the Supreme
Yeah.
Court, yeah.